You are listening to the We Are West Ham podcast with me, Will Pugh, and James Jones, and this is the opposition view ahead of Sunday's game against Nottingham Forest. And I'm delighted to say that I'm joined by Rich Ferraro from the 1865 Nottingham Forest podcast and James Jones from the We Are West Ham podcast. A rare appearance alongside me for the opposition view. Pleasure to have both of you here. Rich, more so you for sure. Look, we'll get into the dynamics and the comings and goings at Nottingham Forest and the fact that you're just one place, 1 point behind us in the Premier League. But I want to kick off, as Jonesy's here, with the do you know, Rich, and are you aware of it, and are you involved in this irrational, weird rivalry / hatred that has developed between Nottingham Forest and West Ham fans in very, very recent seasons, basically off the back of the Jesse Lingard saga. Because, and I don't want to throw him under the bus, James Jones, out of absolutely nowhere, absolutely despises Nottingham Forest now.
Well, I mean, I can't speak for what other people may feel, but yeah, I can totally understand why. For some reason, Jesse Lingard seems to be an emotive character, positive or negative.
I have to say that my hatred for Nottingham Forest has subsided somewhat since last season. Yeah, it has. It has. The thing that it was all born out of the whole Jesse Lingard saga. I still really don't know why he decided to go to Nottingham Forest. I think even given the season he had as well, I think even Nottingham Forest fans are like, well, why did you bother, mate? Especially when he had an offer from West Ham on the table, a place where he'd done so well at before, and he decided to go to, people say it's money, it says he's got Nottingham Forest, just been promoted and signed about 650 players. And then, obviously, we had that game at the City Ground, Nottingham Forest's first Premier League game in 23 years or whatever it was. It was like the worst game of football in the world. We missed.
I'm still angry about that.
Had a goal disallowed, wrongfully disallowed. Nottingham Forest had a player sent off for handball.
Put a handball on the line. Yeah,
it was just ridiculous. It was just a ridiculous game, and the comments underneath our reaction video on YouTube for Nottingham Forest fans were, quite frankly, a disgrace. So therefore, I just developed this hatred. I really, only last season, really wanted Nottingham Forest to get relegated, and I was gutted when he didn't. But that's all gone now. I kind of feel like it's a clean slate. We go again this season, and there are no hard feelings, Rich.
And Rich seems like a really nice bloke as well, so I feel bad.
Oh, Rich, mate, it wasn't personal. It wasn't personal. Yeah. It was just something burning inside me. Just really, I was on a rage for all season.
Well, James, you gave us a fairly balanced view from the away end after that match. We expressed a bit of disquiet, and the refereeing decisions and the fact you hit the bar and everything, and all of those kinds of factors. So I'm a bit surprised to see exactly how much that ate away inside of you for the remainder of the season.
It really did. Yeah, look, Rich, I'm so sorry that was your welcome to the We Are West Ham podcast, but yeah, it was.
Also, I hope you got it out of your system when you absolutely tanked us at your place. So.
Oh, that was good therapy. That I enjoyed that very much that day. Yeah.
Listen, Rich. While we're on the topic, then before we get into the current affairs, if you like, of Forest's fortunes, talk to us a little bit about Jesse Lingard. This also, Jonesy, actually seems like a good time to bring up the fact that really randomly, Rich, me and James were having a beer together before the Arsenal game. In a little pub near the stadium on Wednesday, and just at the bottom of Westfield it is. Tappy, shout out, great little boozer, and we're just standing by the door, and someone walks past, and I went, "Hang on a minute, that looks like Cheku Kouyaté." Sure enough, this 6'4" bloke turns round, and it was Cheku Kouyaté. I give him the old cheers. He gave us a little smile and a wave, didn't he? It was lovely.
Yeah.
And yeah, we were both very surprised to see Cheku playing at Nottingham Forest now, of course, back in Westfield, just shopping around with his missus. But start with Lingard, and we'll go on to Kouyaté afterwards. But what did you make of the move in the first place with Lingard, and then how it ended up playing out with him at Forest?
Well, I mean, it's not a big surprise, is it? If it had worked out, it would have been an amazing signing. He just as he was getting good, he got injured, and that happened a couple of times. And in the Carabao Cup match against Tottenham, he was looking like the player that we hoped he would be. And then we never really saw that again because every time he'd get injured. And then what it's emerged since is that injured was a bit of a euphemism. It sounds like his mental health problems, depression, whatever it might be, reared its ugly head in the second half of the season. So it didn't really work out. What I will say is that he seems to be very highly regarded at the City Ground, even though he wasn't playing, because he and Dean Henderson, actually, even though he was only on loan, and a few of the other players, we had terrible injury problems, as many teams do, but they were there at home and away, and when they didn't need to be, and they were, adding to the 12th man that was coming from the Forest support as well. So even though it didn't work out, and no one's going to say, "Oh, I wish we'd kept Lingard this season," but even though it didn't work out, I think he kind of moved on with our blessing. With regard to the reason he came to us rather than to you, I think it's very easy to say it's just down to money, and obviously Forest did probably pay him more than we've paid any other player in the past. But also, he did say that because he's got a child who's in Warrington, so I think it meant he didn't have to move house full time. So I think that was part of his reasoning. And again, if you think about the fact that he's been public in talking about his his demons and his mental health struggles, maybe that was the bit of stability he was looking for rather than moving down to London again.
Yeah, of course. How many, do you know roughly, forgive me for putting you on the spot, I don't know roughly how many games he played for you. Did he you mentioned a couple of games there, I don't particularly remember, but did he do anything particularly good, amazing, or I don't really know how many games he ended up playing for you, because you're obviously, as you mentioned, paying him a few quid.
Yeah, it wasn't that many. I say there were flashes where just as we thought he was coming into form. So there were one match. I mean, both of the matches I'm thinking about were against Tottenham. So one was in the League Cup, where Forest, even though we weren't very good at the time, just turned it on, and he set up a goal for Renan Lodi, and he scored one, a header as well. So that shows how good Tottenham's defending was on the day. But in the league against Tottenham, we ended up kind of playing without any strikers. So Lingard, Gibbs White, and Brennan Johnson played as a front three, and the movement and kind of skill and everything was outstanding. And unfortunately, it didn't quite work out because Tottenham basically did a smash and grab on us. But yeah, those matches in particular come to mind as saying, "Oh, there's the real player in there." But yeah, he never got the run of games, and it never quite worked out.
Yeah, fair enough. It's just a bit of an odd situation with Lingard, and it's really hard to sort of make your mind up on him, I think, because he obviously came back to West Ham over the summer and was training with the squad. And look, I was not interested in having him back again. A, we've got loads of players in that position anyway. B, and I do take on board what you said. I appreciate with some players, he is a northern type player, right?
Yeah.
I'm not saying Nottingham Forest is the north, but like you say,
it is for you, isn't it? Let's be honest.
Yeah, exactly, mate. Yeah, but Nottingham to Warrington, like you say, it probably might be an hour and a half, 2 hours. I don't know, but compared to the 4 hours or whatever, 4.5 it takes from London,
much,
right? Yeah, that is a significant reason. But and obviously then he's gone to Saudi, and reports there saying he was asking for too much money and sort of still struggling to get a club, as far as I'm aware. And it just seems like most teams now, unless it is just his financial demands that are putting teams off, but you'd think there'd be someone to take a chance on him, but not the case. Listen, just before we move on, another hammer. Like I say, we saw him the other night, and he's a West Ham player that I really liked. I had a lot of time for Jesse Lingard. He was particularly good under Slaven Bilic in that last season. Upton Park, and a couple of years either side of that. He was like a poor man's Yaya Toure, is how I used to describe him. Went to Palace from us, and then up to you, which I was a bit surprised. What have you made of Checo in his time at the City Ground?
I mean, being honest, is he possibly past his best this season? Yeah, maybe. But last season, there were spells where he made a really important contribution. I think just that bit of Premier League know-how. We saw him at his best when he wasn't playing as a defensive midfielder per se, but we moved to a 4-3-3 when basically we were getting battered when we were playing three at the back. So we moved to a 4-3-3, and we had Kouyaté and Ryan Yates playing as a kind of the roving number 8s with Remo Freuler sitting in the middle between them. And I think that was something that worked quite well. It gave us movement, it gave us energy, and Kouyaté, did a decent job. This season, he's not played as much as with many others. He's suffered from niggling injuries, and also now we've just got competition for places in the middle of the park. He took Cheku himself didn't, but there were some pelters going around when we didn't beat Luton a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
And one of those was because Yates and Kouyaté came on for Dominguez and Sangare in our midfield, and people said, well, and Cooper owned it. Afterwards, he said, that was my mistake. I changed the midfield, and that's the bit where we needed to dominate.
Yeah.
But yeah, he came on with like 15 minutes to go. It disrupted our rhythm in midfield. I say, I wouldn't attach too much blame to the players, but Dominguez and Sangare are different in terms of the amount of energy they can do and the amount of finesse they offer. Whereas, Cheku's a bit of a workhorse, and so is Yatesy. So yeah, I'm taking that as a sign that Forest are moving on as much as Cheku kind of maybe has reached his peak.
Yeah.
Rich, let's move on to this season and the form that Forest are in. So you're just below us in the table, 1 position and 1 point. Just get your recent form. Big win at the weekend at home to Aston Villa. I think that would have been a bit of a coupon buster for many, to be honest. But lots of draws. I think that was your first win in 6, and 4 of those 6 games were draws against teams that you would be looked back in Nottingham Forest to beat. Obviously, you mentioned Luton, Palace, Brentford, and the 2 defeats in that 6 was against Liverpool and Manchester City. What are your thoughts so far, given that, there's probably some drop points in those draws, but you haven't really lost the games against teams that you would expect to beat, if you know what I mean?
I mean, you mentioned about, the reaction of Forest fans can be a bit extreme, as with all clubs. So that's a conversation that we can have separately. But let's just say that we really needed the win at the weekend, because we hadn't won in sort of 7 games. So rather, it's the first win in 7, rather. And yeah, the draw against Luton really got a lot of people kind of eyed up. Brentford, there was the excuse that Kouyaté got a stupid red card, and it was a struggle to win from that point. Palace away, it was a really good performance. We just couldn't quite get the ball in the back of the net, despite a couple of really good efforts. And I'm sure that you'll have seen the run and shot from Murillo. A young lad who's come out of nowhere, and he just kind of turned it on there. And then in the end, actually, the inexperience showed, because if he had a few more games under his belt, he'd have known to side foot it low past the keeper rather than trying to blast it. But yeah, I mean, to use the old cliche, fine margins in that match. Luton was, frankly, a bit of a disgrace in terms of how we threw the game away against a team who, as much as they're showing fight, haven't got that much finesse. So yeah, we needed the win, and it wasn't as much for a coupon buster as you'd have thought, actually, because still our home form is good, and Villa's away form hasn't been amazing, but a relatively poor performance from Villa, but also probably Forest's most complete team performance of the season so far. So we needed it.
Away form then, going into this weekend. See, last season that was a big talking point for Forest. Was it?
When you say talking point, you mean bin fire,
yeah? Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly what I mean. It was poor away from home, especially against West Ham. See that 4-0 win that we briefly mentioned earlier. Still hasn't seen a great deal of improvement. You did get a win at Stamford Bridge, which, let's be honest, this season isn't too difficult, but it's a win all the same. Does that give you much hope going into this weekend?
The away form, it's a bit of a funny one. We've had really, really hard away matches. You mentioned Man City and Liverpool. We haven't won at Liverpool since 1969, so I don't think many people are holding out much hope. What I would say is that against Man City for half the game, against Liverpool for maybe to 30 minutes, against Man United for half the game, against Arsenal for about 30 minutes. We showed a really good level of performance. Unfortunately, in most cases, that came a bit too late. But it showed a level of sophistication and finesse that we hadn't shown away from home for most of last season, and certainly didn't at your place last year. So I think you'll see a slightly different edge to Forest this time round. Whether that's enough to get us wins away from home, I'm confident it will. By winning against Chelsea, hey, we already have as many away wins as we had for the entirety of last season. So that's got to be a good starting point, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's true. It's true. If you're going to get anything out this weekend, which, to be fair, given the form we're in, you do have half a chance if you take our league form. But who's David Moyes looking at this weekend in the Nottingham Forest team? Going, right, we need to keep him quiet.
So the obvious one is Taiwo Awoniyi, who's he's been out injured. He played most of the match yesterday, and he looked really strong. And he looks. I mean, obviously, Mikel Antonio is a player that we know well. We didn't play him up front that often, but actually, there's a similarity in terms of energetic, a bit clumsy looking. You're kind of wondering what he's going to do next. But Taiwo also knows where the goal is. So that's the obvious.
Oh, that's unlike Mikel Antonio.
Yeah. Antonio doesn't know where the goal is. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I love Rich. You were going to use the word clumsy, and then remembered who you were talking to, and it's like if anyone knows what it's like to watch a clumsy striker, it's these two. But yeah, sorry, mate, carry on.
But actually, I think the players who have probably stolen the show in the last few weeks, Nico Dominguez in midfield. I mean, we swapped Remo Freuler. Was obviously a really good player, but he just wasn't a Premier League player, and it wasn't working out. So to swap him for Dominguez, who looks like the real deal, he looks like a proper number 8. He's got finesse, he's got energy, he can get his foot in. He's got international cap for Argentina in the past, so he's mixing with good players, and so he's been really good. But the one who stood out for me personally this season has been Raul Mangala, who's been playing as a kind of a number 6 this season, just sitting in front of the back four. And just because he's got Sangare and Dominguez either side, he's really enjoying the fact that he's got that little bit of space. He's got the outlets to pass to. And we saw the other day that, just yesterday, he kind of scored a goal. He had a bit of space and he thought, I'm going to have a go here. And it wasn't the best shot in the world, but it had enough power that it made World Cup winning goalkeeper, Lev Yashin Award winner, Emi Martinez look very, very stupid indeed.
Yeah, that was a bit of a gaffe, wasn't it? It was a bit of a weird one. So look, Rich, this game on Sunday afternoon, it is London Stadium with West Ham's European home game against Olympiacos on Thursday, meaning the game's been pushed. How do you expect Steve Cooper and Forest to approach it style-wise? James has mentioned our form recently. We're still this season sort of happy-ish to let the other teams have the ball. We turned on this high press against Arsenal in the League Cup, which worked wonders, and sort of reverted back to type against Brentford. We have had some tough games in the league, but it's a pretty important one. But how do you think style-wise Steve Cooper's going to approach it?
Well, he's tried to evolve Forest style. I mean, last season survival was built upon having a low block and quick attacks, using Taiwo as that focal point, and so on. This season he's tried to evolve it, have a little bit more possession base, and it's looked good, but it hasn't necessarily gained us success. So I think this time round, I wouldn't be surprised if he reverts to a low block, and with Alanga, Gibbs-White and Awoniyi up front, relying upon pace and trickery to get behind your defence. And that's what I would expect Forest to do tactically. I also think that some of that it'll still be a case of Forest will maybe try and sit back and maybe, if we do have more of the ball, keep hold of the ball and be patient, because we know that you'll be tired after the European match as well. And just as a bit of an aside, as you may or may not realise, Olympiacos is our sister team. We've got the same owner, and so there's quite a few Forest players and ex-Forest players over there. So whether they'll be asking Gustavo Scarpa to put in a reducer on some of your players or not, I don't know.
Yeah, quite. Yeah, this Marinakis, of course. We got the guys on. Or we had the guys on earlier this week, of course, from Gate 7 International, chatting about Thursday's game. In fact, by the time people are listening to this, the likelihood is Thursday's game will be finished already. But yeah, it's a strange one. Jonesy, what are you, before we let Rich go and get a score prediction off of both of you? How are you feeling about the game? Because I feel like it's one of them on paper. It's sort of, we need a result in the league, don't we? Moisey sort of boxed himself into a corner at the moment, really. That performance at Brentford obviously disappointing. What were you thinking about the Forest game?
I mean, we've been saying it for the last 2 weeks, haven't we? But we definitely need a reaction of some sort. We thought we had that against Arsenal in the cup,
which we did. To be fair, like, still a good win.
We did, but then we followed that up with the Brentford game. Like, that's 4 games in the league without a win, 1 point in the last 4. And if we're going to finish in the top 8 this year, which is the aim, then we have to start winning football matches again. And we should be looking at, no disrespect, Rich, we should be looking at Nottingham Forest at home, given their away form. Yeah. As right, okay, well, this needs to be 3 points. It cannot be any less than 3 points. Yeah. Taking into account the performance against Arsenal and generally our home form, barring the Everton game, has been pretty good. Yeah. Backing us to get back on a horse and get all 3 points.
Yeah, there we go. I don't know really. Again, obviously, it makes it slightly difficult with Thursday's game coming up, and we haven't discussed that yet. But either way, I think it is so important now with that. The Everton one was the one really. Brentford, I know that's 5 defeats on the spin now, but Everton was the one that really sort of makes it important. So I don't know. It just feels like West Ham fans would often fall into a trap of going, we should beat Nottingham Forest, ignoring the fact they're 1 point behind us in the league. But yeah, again, as I've said before, Moisey knows when to pull a result out just as the pressure's starting to crank up on him. So I am quietly confident that we can turn this one around. But I think any West Ham fans sort of taking it for granted that we'll win against a well-organised team under an absolutely brilliant manager, I think will be a little bit foolish. But Rich, it's been great having you on the show on the We Are West Ham podcast. Thanks so much for joining us. Just before we let you go, give us a score prediction. Sunday afternoon, London Stadium, West Ham v Nottingham Forest in the Premier League.
Head says 2-2, heart says 2-1 to Forest.
There we go. Jonesy?
We can't keep a clean sheet for love nor money, so I think Forest will score. I'm going to go 2-1 or 3-1 West Ham. We've got goals. Obviously, Bowen's firing them in. Kudos has started scoring as well. So I'm going to go 2-1 or 3-1 West Ham.
Well, pick one, because I'm going to go with the other one. Not that we ever call back to these anyway.
I'll go 3-1. 3-1. Goals.
Yeah. All right. Well, weirdly, I think it's going to be 2-1 to West Ham.
Oh, funny that.
I predict Kudus to score. That's my prediction.
Yeah. Kudus and Forest, both of those to score for sure. Yeah. But listen, Rich Ferraro there from the 1865 Nottingham Forest podcast. Absolutely brilliant having you on the show. Looking ahead to Sunday's game.